The dinner rush hits like a thunderstorm that forgot how to stop raining. The air inside Giordano's is thick with steam and laughter and the hiss of oil on steel. Someone's arguing in Italian by the pizza oven. The bell at the pass keeps ringing, and I'm balancing 3 plates on one arm when I hear it. My sister's voice, high and cracking across the noise. That sound makes everything in me go still. Sophia never raises her voice, not even when she should. I turn, searching through the blur of tables and flickering candlelight, and that's when I see him. He's standing from the corner booth like a dark wave unfolding. His suit is black, tailored within an inch of sin, his hair slicked back, his jaw carved from something that doesn't know how to bend. The air around him shifts, a current that makes everyone nearby quiet without realizing why. His hand is braced on the table, his voice low but sharp enough to slice through the noise. You seat walk-ins at a reserved table and you think that's acceptable? Sophia's trying to explain, voice trembling, one hand over the curve of her belly, but he cuts her off again. The words are calm, lethal, the way a knife stays steady before it strikes. She's 7 months pregnant, small and soft, and this man is towering over her like a storm. I don't think. I move. The plates hit the counter with a clatter, and I'm weaving through tables before my brain can name the danger. Hey! My voice echoes louder than I meant it to. You don't get to yell at pregnant women. The entire restaurant stops breathing. Even the kitchen noise fades like someone's turned a dimmer switch on the world. His head turns toward me, slow, deliberate. Up close, his presence feels impossible. Too large, too composed. His eyes are dark, not brown, something deeper, the kind of color that swallows light whole. He studies me, the corner of his mouth curling. Do you have any idea who I am? I step closer until I can smell his cologne. Expensive, sharp, smoke wrapped in cedar. No, I say, and I don't care. You can keep your money, your ego, and your attitude. You're going to lower your voice and sit down like a decent human being, or you can go to hell. Someone gasps. One of his men, the ones I hadn't even noticed until now, shifts at a nearby booth, hand brushing inside his jacket. My pulse stumbles, but I don't move. His eyes lock on mine, and for a heartbeat, I think he might actually strike me down right there. Then the smallest, strangest thing happens. He smiles. Not kind, not cruel, curious. Take me there, he murmurs. The words slide over the space between us like silk and thread at once. I blink. What? If you're the one taking me, he says, voice dropping lower, intimate. I'll go willingly. Heat climbs my neck. I can feel everyone watching, forks suspended mid-air, breath caught mid-chest. Then the manager appears, pale and shaking. Mr. Vitali? He stammers. Please, there's been a misunderstanding. Vitali. The name hits like ice water. Every story I've ever heard about that family snaps into place. Money, power, quiet disappearances. No misunderstanding, Sandro Vitali says, eyes still fixed on me. Your hostess made an error. Your waitress corrected my behavior. I appreciate honesty. He reaches into his jacket. His men tense, but he only pulls out a wallet, places several bills, hundreds on the hostess stand, and adds a black card edged in gold. For the inconvenience, he says. His fingers brush mine as he sets it down. Electricity. Dinner, you and me, Friday. Before I can speak, he turns, and the restaurant seems to part for him. His men follow. The door shuts, and the air rushes back into my lungs. Sophia's shaking. I hold her until her breath steadies, whispering that it's fine, that he's gone. But when I glance at the card, the gold letters catch the light like a curse. Alessandro Vitali. I tear it clean in half and drop it into the trash, pretending my hands don't tremble. By the time I finish my shift, the restaurant hums again, but something under my skin won't quiet. His smile, his voice, the way he said, "Take me there." It wasn't anger. It was interest. And long after closing, when the lights are low and the city outside hums its lonely song, I can still hear him saying it, like a promise that hell isn't a place. It's a man who's just decided to find me. The flowers arrived before the morning rush. A delivery man holding a crystal vase taller than my forearm and a card tucked between the stems. Red roses, 24 of them, their scent filling the air like a warning. The card said only 3 words, "Hell seems lonely." Signed with a single letter S, I gave them to the busboy for his girlfriend, and told myself it meant nothing, but my chest still felt tight. All shift long by the 3rd day. It was white lilies by the 4th wildflowers, and a message, written in handwriting. Too controlled to be casual. I am not running out of flowers. I am running out of patience. The same initial signed below by Friday. I knew what was coming. I just did not know what it would cost. The restaurant was half lit when I walked in early that morning, sunlight bending through the front windows, silvering the tables. Sandro Vitali sat in the same back booth as last week alone. This time a cup of espresso in one hand and a bouquet of sunflowers on the table. He looked completely at home, in a place that had held its breath for him once, and never quite exhaled again. His eyes lifted when he saw me, and there it was, that smile like a secret. Only he understood. "Basima," he said, "you have been avoiding me." I wiped my hands on my apron. "I have been working." He nodded, as if this was foreplay and not conversation. "You cannot keep showing up here. You are disrupting business," I told him. "I am a customer, ordering lunch." He gestured toward the menu with lazy elegance. "The ossobuco and your company." "I am not on the menu, pity." He murmured, his gaze dragging over me, as if he was memorizing what he would not yet touch. "You should be the specialty." "What do you want?" I asked. "Dinner tonight." I said I have been clear about that, and I have been clear about my answer. "Then, let us discuss your sister's situation." My pulse jumped. "How do you know about Sofia Rico?" "Salerno," he said, his tone flat, the name scraping across my nerves like sandpaper. 50,000 in gambling debts. He owes my family money when a debtor disappears. The debt passes to blood, to wife, or to child. In this case, the mother of his child. My blood turned to ice. She has nothing. She is 22 and pregnant, and still believes the world will forgive her, I said softly. She made no mistake, Rico did. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, his voice low, not cruel, just factual. "I do not want her suffering. I want an arrangement." My jaw tightened. "What kind of arrangement?" 6 weeks, you work for me, whatever. I need hostess assistant company at events, you do as I ask. At the end of 6 weeks, Rico's debt is gone and your sister is safe. You are blackmailing me. That is the definition of unreasonable. I said. He smiled. The slow, dangerous kind. I prefer to call it negotiation. You could call it what you like. It was still a threat. "I have a job," I said. "You have 2 now," he replied. "My evenings require intelligence, not servitude." His eyes softened for the first time. "You will be safe, Lucia." I stared at him, across the polished wood, and felt the line I had drawn between right and wrong start to blur, because he was offering safety, wrapped in sin. And I had no other door to walk through. His voice sank to a whisper. "You have until Monday to decide after that the world I live in will not wait for your answer." He stood, left 100 on the table for an untouched espresso, and walked out again, leaving the air heavy and the bouquet burning gold against the morning light. I looked down at the card he had left on the table, new number, same gold lettering, Alessandro Vitali, written like a signature and a sentence all in one. The restaurant around me felt too small for breathing, and when I closed my eyes, I knew I was already deciding against my better judgment and in favor of the devil who smiled when I told him to go to hell. Monday came with rain, heavy and relentless, pounding the windows of my small apartment like a countdown. Every drop, a reminder that time was up. Sophia was asleep on the couch, her hands folded over the curve of her belly, her breathing soft and shallow. I stood by the sink staring at my phone, the new card lying on the counter beside it. The gold letters catching what little light slipped through the clouds. I should have thrown it away like the first one. But something in me refused. Maybe fear, maybe defiance, maybe both. When I finally picked it up, my fingers trembled only once before I dialed. A woman's voice answered. Calm, clipped, efficient, Vitali Holdings. She said like a password, "He is expecting your call." I opened my mouth to ask how she could possibly know, but the line clicked, and a second later, his voice poured through the speaker, smooth, dark, steady Lucia. He said, as if he had been waiting beside the phone since Friday. I swallowed. "I am calling about the deal. I accept." There was a long silence that felt like gravity. Then good, come to the office tomorrow. 10 sharp, dress like you belong in the sky. The next morning, Manhattan glittered wet and cold. The skyscrapers slicing through fog like blades. The lobby of his building smelled like marble, and control security guards with faces carved from stone checked my ID twice before letting me step into an elevator lined with glass. 40 floors up, the doors opened into another world. The floors gleamed. The walls were white, and the city stretched below like a map of someone else's mistakes. His assistant Marta was older, sharp-eyed. She scanned me once, nodded and led me down a hall that felt too quiet. He was on the phone when I entered his office, speaking Italian, his voice low, dangerous and precise when he saw me. He lifted one finger. "Wait," finished the call and smiled. "I knew you would come. You do not know me." I said, "Yes, I do." He replied, "You came because loyalty outweighs fear. Sit the leather chair across." From his desk swallowed me whole. His desk itself looked more like an altar than furniture. He slid a folder toward me. A contract employment. 6 weeks terms clearly stated. No illegal acts. No harm to you or your family. The debt forgiven when the term ends. Sign it or walk away. I will respect either choice. His calm unnerved me. He was not gloating. He was waiting like a man watching a storm roll toward him, knowing it was inevitable. I read the pages. Legal words, swimming in my head and signed. Before courage could escape, he took the papers, his fingers brushing mine, and said quietly, "Welcome to my world." "I do not want your world," I said. "Then make it better," he replied. The day unfolded like a test. I shadowed him through meetings with developers and investors, people who smiled too wide and lied too easily. He asked me afterwards what I saw. I told him one man was bluffing. The other was desperate. He leaned back. Impressed. "You have instincts." He said, "Use them. They will keep you alive by evening." My head spun from numbers and tension. He drove me home himself. The car silent, except for rain on glass. When he stopped in front of my building, he said, "You did well today, but remember, Lucia. Honesty is a weapon, wield it carefully." And he looked at me with something unreadable behind his eyes. Not lust, not pity, something sharper. Something that warned me he would never let me fall unless it was into his world. I climbed the stairs to my apartment, the sound of the city muffled behind me inside. Sophia slept peacefully, the world pretending to be normal. But when I looked out the window, a black car idled across the street, its engine low, its lights off, waiting, and though I could not see him, I knew he was inside, watching, not to threaten, but to guard. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the strange mix of fear and safety that meant my life no longer belonged to me alone. The fourth morning in Sandro Vitali's world began before sunrise. The city still half asleep, and the sky the color of steel. I dressed in silence, the paper contract folded in my bag like a heartbeat. I could not turn off when I arrived. The office smelled of coffee and rain. Marta nodded me through without a word. Her eyes softer than yesterday almost, like she pitied me. Sandro was standing by the glass wall overlooking the skyline, his reflection layered over clouds and skyscrapers like a ghost made of wealth and control. He did not greet me with words. He simply said, "Watch and listen." Then motioned. To the men waiting at the table, they were developers, voices, confident faces, polished like marble. They presented blueprints and projections. Every word wrapped in flattery and fraud. I could see it. The nervous tapping, the over-explained numbers, the promise that sounded too rehearsed after 20 minutes. Sandro's tone turned slow and cutting. "Ask them about the third egress," he said without looking at me. The men blinked. Confusion flickered across their faces what third egress one asked. "Exactly," he replied, his voice still calm. "You built the illusion of safety, but forgot the escape." The silence that followed was heavy enough to break bones when the meeting ended. Sandro leaned back in his chair, eyes on me. "How did you know?" he asked. "I didn't," I said. "I just watched his mouth twitched." "You were right, either way. Good instincts are worth more than obedience." He handed me a notepad and said, "From now on, I want you to write what you see, not what they say. Truth lives in details." I nodded, still unsure why he wanted me close, still unsure why my pulse jumped every time his voice softened. Round noon, he took me to lunch, not at some glittering penthouse restaurant, but at a corner trattoria, small, simple, alive with the smell of tomato and basil. The waitress knew him by name, her hands trembling as she poured his wine, but he spoke to her gently in Italian, and she smiled when she left. I asked why here, he shrugged. "Because power is useless if you cannot sit among ordinary people without choking on your own ego." We ate in silence until he asked about my sister, his tone quiet, not probing. "How is she?" I said, "She is tired, scared." He nodded like he understood that kind of fear too. "My family once made fear a business," he said. "I am trying to end that business, but old habits cling to blood. It takes something or someone honest to wash them out." I looked at him, then really looked and saw exhaustion beneath the perfection, saw the man inside the myth. When we returned to the office, Marta met us at the elevator, her face pale. There was a delivery, she said no, return address. Sandro's eyes sharpened. He tore the package open inside a single black playing card, the ace of spades, and beneath it, a photo of him standing beside his car taken from across the street, too recent. He looked at me, a shadow passing through his gaze. "Whoever sent this wants me to know they are close," he said, and then quieter. "They want to know if you are important." My stomach twisted. "Why me?" "Because you walked into my storm and didn't flinch," he replied. "And now they think you are my weakness." He reached into his drawer, pulled out a small pendant on a thin gold chain and placed it in my palm. "Keep this with you. Always." I started to protest. He cut me off. "It's not jewelry. It's a signal. If you ever feel watched, press the center. Once my people will come for you." The pendant felt warm against my skin, almost alive when I put it around my neck. His eyes followed the motion, and something unspoken moved between us. Something that felt like danger and safety, tangled into one. When I left that evening, the rain had stopped, but the air still smelled of thunder. I checked my reflection in the window of the car, waiting for me. My face looked the same, but the girl inside it had changed. I was no longer just Lucia, the waitress. I was part of his story, and stories like his never ended in peace. The night air tasted like metal and rain when I stepped out of the car. My shift at the restaurant long over, but my mind still trapped inside Sandro Vitali's world. I was supposed to be home asleep beside my sister, but my phone buzzed with a message that made sleep impossible. "Meet me." The address followed a waterfront restaurant closed at this hour, the kind of place where shadows whisper. I almost ignored it, but curiosity or maybe defiance pushed me to go. When I arrived, the place was dim, one candle burning on a table near the window. Sandro sat there, his jacket off his shirt sleeves, rolled his forearms marked with faint scars. I had not noticed before he looked up when I entered. No smile, no charm, just a quiet weight in his eyes. You came? He said. I told myself I wasn't going to. And yet here you are. He motioned for me to sit, his voice low, steady like a man walking a line between confession and command. He poured wine, the dark red catching the candlelight I came to. Talk, he said. Not about business, about you. About what you're doing here. I laughed, bitter. I'm paying a debt. My sister's debt. His gaze didn't waver wrong. He said, You're saving her. That's what loyalty looks like. Most people forget what. That means I wanted to argue. But the air between us shifted. There was something raw in him tonight. Something human. He said he had been born into power, not ambition. He never asked for the empire his father built, but inherited its violence like a curse. Sometimes I wonder if I ever had a choice, he murmured when I was 16. I watched a man die for crossing my father. My punishment was learning how to order it the next time. The words hit like a blade. I saw then how his control was not arrogance but survival. Every movement measured to keep his darkness locked away. He looked at me across the table, eyes sharp with a strange kind of plea. Tell me, Lucia, what do you see when you look at me? I should have said danger, but the truth slipped out. I see a man trying not to drown. For the first time he smiled. Not the dangerous one, but something softer, almost broken. I do not deserve that kind of mercy, he said. Then his phone buzzed, and the world snapped back. He read the message, his jaw tightening. Trouble, his driver is late. He said we leave now. Outside, the street was too quiet. The sound of the river loud in the distance. I noticed the black sedan parked across the road. Windows tinted. Sandro's eyes flicked toward it, and I felt the moment shift from unease to threat. He moved fast, pushing me behind him as two figures stepped out of the car, their movements sharp and deliberate. Sandro's voice was low. Stay behind me. And no matter what happens, don't run the first. Man spoke in accented English. Mr. Vitali, you're a hard man to reach. Sandro's hand brushed his coat. I could feel his muscles coiled like wire. He said calmly, You just did the flash. Came first. The sound after one shot. Split the night. The man staggered but didn't fall. His partner lifted a gun of his own, and the world exploded into chaos. Sandro grabbed my arm, pulling me down behind the concrete barrier, the echo of bullets bouncing off metal, the smell of smoke thick in my throat when silence returned. The men were gone, one bleeding against a car door. The other vanished. Sandro crouched beside me, his breathing rough but steady. He looked at me, his shirt darkened at the shoulder where a bullet had grazed him. I tried to reach for the wound. He caught my wrist. It's nothing. You need to breathe. I didn't listen. I tore a piece of my sleeve and pressed it against the blood. He didn't flinch. His hand came up, touched my face, light as air. And for a second the world stopped. His voice dropped softer than I had ever heard it. You see, why I said my world would destroy yours. I looked back at him, the streetlights flickering around us, the river murmuring like it knew every secret in his bones. Maybe I said, or maybe your world just needs someone not afraid to walk through it with you. He laughed low and painful. Maybe hell isn't the place you go. He said maybe it's the one you build. And you were right, Lucia. You told me to go to hell. And now you're the only one. I want there with me." Before I could answer, sirens wailed in the distance, headlights sweeping the street. Sandro stood pulling me to my feet, his blood on my hands, his eyes full of something I could not name. "We have to go," he said, and as the car doors opened and the city roared back to life, I knew there was no going back. I had stepped into his fire, and somehow it felt like the only place I had ever belonged. The next morning, the city looked calm, but I knew it was only pretending sunlight, bounced off glass towers like lies made of light. My hands still smelled faintly of blood and smoke. I had washed them 3 times, and it didn't change a thing. Sophia was humming softly in the kitchen. Her voice fragile as porcelain. She didn't ask where I had been. I didn't tell her she didn't need to. She only said, "You're shaking again," and handed me a cup of coffee, the kind of small gesture that felt like survival. At 10, a black car pulled up outside the apartment I recognized, it before the driver even knocked. Sandro's voice came through the phone before I could decide to answer. "Come down, Lucia. No questions. I want you where I can see you." My heart started running faster than my feet. But I still went the elevator ride, felt endless. When I stepped outside, the car door opened and he was there. His arm in a black sling, his jaw tight, eyes darker than I had ever seen them get in. He said I did. He said nothing until we reached his penthouse, the world above the world, its silence heavier than air. The city spread below like a chessboard. He stood by the window, his reflection layered over the skyline. "They came for you." "Not for me," he said. "The rivals know you were with me last night. They think hurting you will hurt me. It will." I wanted to speak, but words stuck. He turned his head slowly. "You are staying here until I fix it." I told him I couldn't just leave my life behind. He said, "Your life is already standing inside my crosshairs. Lucia, you can't undo that. So you can either hide or fight beside me." And his voice broke on the word beside, as if it had never belonged to him before he walked away to take a call. I watched him speak in Italian, quick-clipped, dangerous tones that sounded like knives wrapped in silk. When he hung up, he said softly, "I need to show you something." He led me to a locked room near his office. He opened it and the air shifted. Inside were photographs, maps, names connected by red string, a network of danger that seemed to stretch. Across half the city, he pointed to a picture near the center. "Rico, my ex Sophia's mistake, and my curse. Your former lover owes more than 50,000. Now he owes allegiance to men who want me gone. They are using him to reach me through you." I felt the room tilt. He was alive after everything. Sandro nodded, alive and desperate. "I plan to end that desperation today. I'm going to meet him, but not alone. You are coming with me." I shook my head. "I'm not bait. You already are." "Lucia," he said, quietly, "but I promise you, I will not let them touch you." By the time we reached the warehouse at the edge of the river, the sky had gone pale gray, the smell of salt and metal heavy in the air. Rico was waiting, thin, desperate sweat glistening on his forehead. He saw me and flinched like guilt had hands. "Lucia," he said, "I didn't mean for it to go this far. You never do." I said, "You just start the fire and hope someone else burns first." Sandro stood behind me, silent as a loaded gun, his presence filling the room. Rico tried to speak again, but Sandro cut through him with words colder than winter. "You owe me money, but you took something more dangerous. You took her peace of mind that costs extra." Rico's face went white. He reached into his jacket. Too fast, Sandro moved faster. His men stepping from the shadows, guns raised, hearts pounding in the echo of metal and threat. I screamed, "Stop," and Sandro froze his gaze, flicking toward me for that split second, that fragile second of mercy. Rico dropped the weapon, his hands shaking. He said, "Please don't let him kill me." And for a heartbeat, I almost pitied him, until I saw the tiny red dot moving across Sandro's chest from somewhere outside the window. "Sniper." Sandro hissed, dragging me down glass. Shattered bullets, slicing air chaos, exploded. His men returned fire, shouting in Italian. "Get her out," he ordered. But I refused to leave. I grabbed his arm, pulled him toward the floor, my breath hot against his neck. "Stay down." The gunfire stopped as suddenly as it started when the echo died. The warehouse felt too still. Sandro's shoulder was bleeding again, but his eyes stayed locked on mine. "You see?" He whispered, "This is my world every day. A target, every choice. A weapon I could feel my pulse, pounding in my throat. Maybe it's time someone changed your world." Then I said, he smiled, even through the blood, "You always say the wrong thing at the right time." "Lucia." Outside sirens wailed closer. He stood pulling me to my feet, his hand gripping, mine hard enough to brand it with heat. "Come on," he said. "We're done here." But as we stepped into the daylight, I knew we weren't done. Not even close, the storm was only just beginning, and I was already standing at its center next to the man who made hell feel like home. The storm that followed lasted 3 days. Thunder over the river, lightning slicing the sky, like warning signs written by gods. The city drowned in rain and sirens, and I barely slept. Sandro's men were everywhere, shadows on every corner, every rooftop. I had become a ghost inside his fortress walls, the penthouse that looked like a kingdom from the outside but felt like a cage from within. I watched him pace the length of the living room phone pressed to his ear, giving orders in clipped Italian, every word a command, every silence a threat. He was still bleeding but refused to let anyone tend the wound. He said it reminded him that he was alive. By the 4th night, I couldn't take it anymore. I told him I needed air. He said no. I told him he was not my keeper. He said, "You are wrong." And for the first time there was anger, not control in his voice. He crossed the room, eyes darker than the storm outside. "Do you think I like this, keeping you locked away? I am doing this because I cannot lose you." I wanted to yell at him to tell him he didn't own me. But his voice cracked on the last word and something inside me softened. I asked what he was afraid of. He said quietly, "Losing the one person who never wanted anything from me but truth." When I turned away, the power went out. The city lights below blinked into darkness. The silence deepened. Sandro grabbed my wrist. "Stay close," he whispered before I could answer. Glass shattered from the balcony. A figure in black crashed. Through lightning flashing behind him, Sandro shoved me down, drew his gun faster than breath. The intruder fired, missed the bullet sparking off marble. Sandro returned fire once, and the man fell crashing into the table. The thunder outside swallowed the sound. Sandro's breathing was heavy but steady. His men burst through the door seconds later. Too late, he told them to search every floor. He knelt beside the fallen man, pulled off the mask and froze. His jaw tightened. It was one of his own men. The name Matteo whispered, like disbelief. Betrayal cut deeper than bullets. Sandro stood slowly, his face blank, but his eyes burning. The room felt colder. Suddenly he looked at me and said, "Someone inside my house wants me dead." He poured a drink, his hand trembling just enough to break his perfection. For the first time, I saw not the boss, not the legend, but the man, and the weight he carried. I asked what happens. "Now," he said, "now we find out who he worked for. And when we do, we don't call the police. Because in my world, justice doesn't wear a badge." He glanced at me, then softer, almost a whisper. "You should go, but I can't let you." Yet, I sat on the couch, the candlelight flickering between us. He said he had grown up believing love was just another currency to trade or weapon to use. Then he met me, and suddenly every rule he lived by began to break. "You are not like anyone I've known. He said you fight me, but you don't fear me. You see the man everyone else refuses to see." His voice dropped to a whisper. "When I told you to stay away, you didn't listen when I said I was dangerous. You stayed. I wanted to tell him I stayed, because I saw the loneliness behind his anger. But before I could speak, lightning struck again. The flash revealing something outside the window. Another car parked on the street. Headlights off. He noticed it too, and his body tensed. He turned to one of his guards, tell them, no one gets in or out. That night I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, la pendant. He gave me warm against my chest. I pressed it once just to see if it still worked. Minutes later, a light blinked across the street. His way of saying, "I see you. I am here." The city hummed softly beneath us, but the air between us felt charged with something new, not just fear, not just desire, but a strange promise that whatever war was coming, neither of us would face it alone. When dawn finally came, pink and silent over the skyline, Sandro walked to me, his expression unreadable, his voice low. "There will be blood today, but not yours." I looked at him and said, "What if it's yours?" Then he smiled the kind of smile that carried both fate and defiance. "If it is, then I will still find a way back to you, Lucia. Because even hell isn't hell without you in it." Morning came with the echo of gunfire somewhere distant, a sound that had become as common as church bells in Sandro's world. The storm had ended, but the silence it left behind was worse. Sunlight broke through the clouds, slicing across the city like the truth trying to reach us. Sandro stood on the balcony. His shirt opened, the bandage on his shoulder stained dark against his skin. He looked like a man who had made peace with war and was still deciding if he deserved the mourning. He turned when I walked in. No smile. Only the quiet calculation in his eyes. "We found the traitor," he said without preamble. It was Marta. The words hit harder than I expected. She had been the one handing me files. The one who smirked when I made mistakes. The one who always seemed to know too much. "Where is she?" I asked, gone. His voice was flat. "Her brother works for a rival family. She fed them information about you, about us." I stared at him. "About us? You mean me working for you, or the other thing?" The silence that followed was its own confession. He poured coffee for both of us, his hands steady again. "I have made arrangements." He said, "They know you are under my protection. That should keep you safe. But it also paints a larger target. They will not stop until they take something from me." His eyes lifted. "Then you or my name. And I am not willing to lose either." The day moved like a shadow, crawling across the room. Every phone call, every whisper carrying new tension by noon. Sandro was in his study with his lawyers burning contracts, shredding papers, cutting ties to old businesses that smelled of blood. He said he was cleaning house, but I could feel what it really was. Redemption wearing a tailored suit he was dismantling. The empire he had inherited, one signature at a time. At dusk, he told me we were leaving. He handed me a small black envelope inside. Were 2 passports, Lucia Moretti and Alessandro Moretti. I froze. "What is this?" "A name change," he said quietly. "Temporary, but necessary. We are going to the coast tonight. There is a safe house there." "Why are you doing this?" "Because sometimes the only way to protect something good is to bury it deep enough that no one can find it." He stepped closer until I could feel his breath against my skin. "You were right. I cannot change the world I was born into. But I can choose who I stand beside when it burns." We drove through the city as night fell, neon lights reflecting on wet asphalt. The streets almost empty. He drove fast, but his focus never wavered. The rain started again. Soft first, then harder. I could feel danger pressing against the windows unseen. But present halfway across the bridge, headlights appeared behind us. Too close, too deliberate, Sandro's jaw. "Tightened hold on," he said, and the car surged forward. The other vehicle followed faster, weaving between lanes. I heard the sound of a gun cocking before I saw it. The flash in the side mirror. Glass shattered. I screamed. Sandro's arm came around, me pulling me down as he swerved. The tires screamed against metal. He pressed something on the dashboard, a hidden switch. Within seconds, 2 of his own cars appeared from nowhere, cutting off the pursuit. The gunfire stopped one of the attackers. Cars spun into the guardrail and exploded into flame. The light burned behind us like a second sunrise. Sandro didn't slow until we reached the edge of the city, where the sea met the road. He pulled over, breathing hard, his hands still gripping the wheel. When he finally looked at me, his voice was raw. "Are you hurt?" I shook my head. His hand reached for mine, and for the first time I saw his fingers tremble. He said quietly, "They will not stop coming, but I am done running. I will end this tonight." He turned to go. I grabbed his arm. "You can't keep fighting alone." He looked down at me, his eyes softer now than I had ever seen them. "Maybe I was never meant to fight alone," he said. "Maybe that was the point, all along." That night we reached the coast, a house hidden behind the cliffs, waves crashing below, lightning far away. In the distance, the sea wind carrying the smell of salt and danger. He walked through the dark rooms, checking every door before finally stopping at the window. He said, "It's not forever, just long enough to finish what I started." I asked what happens when it's finished. He said, "Then maybe we can stop surviving and start living." He turned to me. Then the shadows of the room wrapping around us like secrets when I looked. In his eyes, I didn't see the man who terrified a city. I saw the one who had been drowning in it for years. He touched my face, his thumb brushing the edge of my jaw, and said, "You told me to go to hell, and I took you with me, but somehow you turned it into something holy." Outside, the sea kept roaring, the storm coming closer again. But for that one quiet moment, the world held its breath, and I believed that maybe, just maybe, hell could be rewritten into love. The safe house by the sea didn't feel safe anymore. The air itself seemed to listen to every whisper, the walls breathing with secrets that didn't belong to us. I could taste the salt and the tension. In equal measure, Sandro hadn't slept. Sat by the window, his gun resting on the table beside a cup of untouched coffee. His face drawn tight, as if he was waiting for someone who had already arrived but hadn't announced themselves yet. I asked if he trusted the guards outside. He said, "Trust is a word built by fools and broken by survivors." Then he looked at me and added, "Except you." That line landed somewhere deep under my ribs. I didn't know if it was love or warning. Maybe both. He handed me his phone. The screen showing a photo, grainy from a security camera. It was Marta, his former assistant, walking into the Vitali building with a man I didn't recognize until Sandro said his name. Enzo Falco, the man who had once been his brother in blood, and now wanted him dead, the man who knew every door code, every safe house, every weakness. "We leave tonight." Sandro said, his tone low but final. I asked where. He didn't answer because he didn't know. And that was the first time I'd ever seen him without a plan. Hours passed, in silence until the sun began to die, painting the sky in blood red and ash. The sound of the sea grew louder, as if warning us that something was coming. We were sitting at the small table when the first bullet shattered the window. "Get down," he shouted. Pulling me to the floor, the lights went out again. Glass rained over us. The walls shook with footsteps and gunfire. Sandro's men returned fire, shouting commands in Italian. One of them fell beside me, eyes wide. Still open, the smell of gunpowder, thick in the air. Sandro dragged me toward the back exit, his grip strong, steady, No fear in his movements, only fury. Outside, the rain had started again, cold, sharp, cutting across the wind. We ran down the path toward the cliffs. Headlights flared behind us, a car speeding toward the house. Sandro fired twice. The tires exploded. The car spun sideways and hit a tree. The explosion turned the night white. I could hear my heartbeat louder than the waves. He looked at me through the smoke, his voice calm. "We keep moving, Lucia. We don't stop until I say so." We made it down to the shore where an old fishing boat waited rocking in the waves. One of his men, bleeding but alive, was holding it steady. "Get in," Sandro ordered. I refused. "Not without you," he smiled, that same reckless smile that terrified and saved me all at once. "Always the fighter," he said, before pulling me into the boat himself as the engine coughed to life. As we moved away from the shore, flames rose behind us, the house a burning monument to everything he was leaving behind: his empire, his ghosts, his past. I watched him watching the fire, his face lit in orange and gold, like a fallen angel staring at the gates of his own redemption. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible over the wind. It was my father. He said he never died. He's been running everything from the shadows. And Marta was his voice. The world tilted, the puzzle snapping into place. Every threat, every betrayal, every shadow chasing us had never come from the outside. It had come from blood, from family, from the legacy he had spent his whole life trying to destroy. I reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. He just said quietly, "Now you understand why I told you. Love and danger are the same thing in my world." The sea swallowed our words, the horizon, a dark promise ahead behind us. Everything burned: the empire, the lies, the men who thought they owned him. Sandro looked back one last time and whispered, "It's over." But I knew it wasn't. Not yet. Because the fire behind us wasn't just destruction. It was invitation. His father was still out there, alive and waiting. And the war that had started with a single act of defiance was about to reach its final reckoning. The boat cut through, the black water like a blade through silk. The sea stretched endless around us. No light, no sound but the wind and the low growl of the engine. Sandro stood at the front, his coat whipping in the cold air. His eyes fixed on the horizon. I could tell he wasn't running anymore. He was hunting the truth. He said quietly, "When a man loses everything, he finally sees what was worth keeping." I asked what he meant. He turned to me and said, "You." We reached the old marina before dawn, a place abandoned. Years ago, rusted cranes leaning over cracked pavement. Sandro's men checked the perimeter, but he already knew what waited for him. There, his father had sent a message through one of the bodyguards. The meeting was set. Sunrise, the final page of The Vitali Empire. I wanted to stop him. I said we could disappear, live quietly somewhere. No one would find us. He looked at me with something fierce and sad in his gaze and said, "Disappearing isn't living. It's just dying slower." When the first light broke over the water, his father arrived. 2 black cars sliding through the fog, men in suits stepping out like shadows. The last to appear was a figure I had only seen in photographs. The elder Vitali. Tall, sharp eyes full of arrogance that time hadn't managed to dull. He smiled when he saw his son alive and unbroken. "Alessandro, you've made quite a mess. He said you taught me how." Sandro replied, his voice calm, but coiled. His father laughed the sound. "Hollow power without obedience is chaos," he said. "And love without control is weakness." Then he saw me standing beside Sandro, and something shifted in his face. "So this is the girl who turned my son into a traitor," he said softly. "She looks like mercy, and mercy kills dynasties." Sandro's jaw tightened. "You killed yours long before you met her. You killed it when you taught me to see blood as currency." His father stepped closer. The guards raised their weapons. Sandro didn't flinch. He reached into his coat and tossed a flash drive. Onto the ground. All your accounts, all your operations, names, numbers, offshore, transfers. It's all there, he said. I've dismantled everything. Every thread you used to control this city. The old man's smile faded. He whispered, You think you can? Erase me. I am the foundation of everything you have. Sandro shook his head. Not anymore. I'm the fire that burns what you built. And when the first gunshot rang out, it wasn't from his men. It was from the cliffs above the sniper who had once aimed. For Sandro now aimed for his father one clean shot, and the echo rolled across the sea like thunder. The elder Vitali felt his power ending where it began in betrayal. Sandro didn't move for a long time. He just stared at the man who had haunted every step of his life. The rain began again, light and cold. I stepped closer, touched his arm. It's over, I said. He nodded, but his eyes looked far away. Maybe too far. He whispered, No. It's beginning. He turned to the guards and told them to leave, to vanish to live free men for the first time when they were gone. He faced me again and said, You see, Lucia, this is what hell looks like when you win. Nothing left to conquer, just the quiet and the ashes. I took his hand. We walked to the edge of the dock, the fire of sunrise washing the water in gold. He said he wanted to rebuild something clean, something honest, maybe a foundation for people who had lived too long in fear, maybe a life where his name didn't make others flinch. I told him he didn't need to build anything, he just needed to live. He smiled that rare, unguarded smile and whispered, Then take me there. Months passed. The city changed rumors of the Vitali family. Faded, replaced by whispers of a man who gave away his fortune. To rebuild the places he once owned, the restaurant where I once worked, reopened under a new name. It was quiet, filled with music and light and laughter. Sometimes a tall man sat by the corner window, his hand wrapped around mine. His scar catching, the light. We never spoke about the past. Not out loud. We didn't need to because every glance said it already. One evening, as the sun slipped behind the skyline, Sandro raised his glass to me and said, You told me to go to hell for yelling at your sister, and I did. But you followed and it turned out to be heaven. I smiled, the kind that only comes after surviving the impossible. He took my hand and kissed it softly, and for the first time I believed him, because love had not saved us from darkness. It had simply taught us how to walk through it together. And in that quiet moment with the sea humming beyond the glass, and his heart finally still, I knew that hell was no longer a place. It was a memory we had already escaped.